Hey everybody, welcome back to APM Help Academy. Today we're going to be talking about setting up your Buildium account. So this page I'm on right now is the account and billing page. Now you'll probably spend a decent amount of time on this page just looking at all of your invoices in Buildium. So if you want to look at your monthly invoices, they would show on this page. And now this is a trial subscription, so it would also show what type of subscription plan you're on and how much the cost is per month and what payment method you do have on file. All on this page right here. So to get to the account and billing page, I just clicked on settings, account and billing. Now the account information part right here, you're definitely going to want to edit this when you first get Buildium because it tends to default to certain things in here. For instance, the company name is simply going to default to the URL of your account. So you're going to want to edit this here. So I can simply edit company name, change this to APM Help. I can put in the address of my company, default company phone number, default company email, the tax identity type here would, most cases the EIN, enter in that information. The account owner right here is going to be the user that you want to be the account owner. So this can be found in the settings and users area, which we'll touch on in a second. The company default bank account, that is if you're tracking your company books in Buildium, this is more important. Otherwise, most people would just choose their operating trust account or an association's bank account. It wouldn't really matter too much in that case if you're not tracking your company books in Buildium. And then your company signature. And you can change your account's URL from this page as well. Just be really careful if you do this in the future, because if you give all of your residents a URL and then you go in and change this here, everybody's going to need to change their bookmark then in that case. So something to keep in mind there. But once I save this, you'll notice that this changes right here. And this is also going to change in the branding area. So if I go to settings, application settings, and I go to application branding, it changes right here as well. And what this is related to is mainly the resident portal. So when residents sign in, they will see that your company name is going to show like in that portal on the top of their screen and just like the branding in general. So that's what's going to show there. And I can change this and make it different from my company info on the account and billing page. So if for some reason you wanted maybe a legal name to show in Buildium's account information page, but you want your DBA name to show in the resident portal, you could change it right from here. So that's something to keep in mind there. And yeah, that's pretty much it for just the basic company profile and the company, contact information and things like that. So speaking of application settings, we'll go back to this page here because there's some default settings you're definitely going to want to play around with here. Mainly now the business rules, this is really going to be really important for setting up, your management fee settings, your application fees, all of these really should be looked at once you're first starting with Buildium. But we'll start out with just system preferences. You already saw the application branding. Property types. Now, if you don't manage associations, you could always uncheck this. Same thing if you only do associations, you can uncheck this, or if you do both, you can keep them checked. Region, this is where you can set your time zone and date, the currency you're working with, settings such as that. Reports. Now, this right here has to do with how you want your company information to show in reports. So, this would be your company name, your company address. You could change that information right here. This would show in rent owner statements, income statements, reports such as that you're gonna send out to your owners. Printer alignment. Now this is for if you're printing checks in Buildium or you're printing deposit slips, you would change your printer alignment settings here. Text messaging, if you want to enable or disable that feature. Average strong, this has to do with mainly import and export functionality, as it says here. Beta features, this is pretty cool here. Like when Buildium has a feature that's in beta that they're testing, you can always opt in or opt out, turn these on or off. It's pretty cool. You can play around with features that Buildium's testing. So yeah, those are some settings there. You can these are some more like basic like system settings, whereas these business rules, these are really important to set up correctly before you start with Buildium. Such as like, your default accounting basis, trust account warning messages. When I go to enter in transactions, do I want Buildium to default to having me select a unit, or just simply default to property level or association level? If you want to turn on locked periods, management fee settings. Maybe this doesn't apply to you if you're an owner operator, just depends. Just a lot of settings in general that you really should go through here to make sure Buildium's all set up in the way that you need it to be that fits your business practices. This resident one I clicked on here, I just clicked on, it's important because there's a lot of like defaults that you're going to want set up, like do you want prepayments turned on, which I do recommend to keep reporting clean. Reminders and statements. Do you want Buildium to send out reminders? How do you want your payment allocation set up when tenants pay? Like, do you want it to apply to outstanding, the largest outstanding balance first, or do you want to set up a custom order? So like I want it to go to rent first, then I want it to go to late fees next, etc. So yeah, these are just really important settings that you want to get set up in Buildium before you really start entering transactions, having tenants pay online. It's important that these are set up the way you need them to be. So that's a little bit on the settings end. Now going over to the team members and the user permissions. So to get there, I just clicked on settings and then users. Now this area here is where I can basically just add any staff member that works for my company and give them access to Buildium right here. Now, when I'm adding a staff member, it's pretty basic information in terms of like a name or a company name, their phone number, email is required in order to log into Buildium. And then the role is really important. So this is going to be how much access they have to the account. Now, I can set up custom roles. That's something I'll touch on in a bit. But the administrator role is the role that gives access to everything. It's basically like the master kind of role in Buildium. So something to keep in mind there. And I can edit my users at any time. So if I go to click on an existing staff member, I can always go in, edit information about them. If I need to change their email, phone number, I could also change their user role at any time. I can edit the information about name just in case. So I can always inactivate a staff member too, or block their access completely. Inactivating a staff member does remove their access and removes all email notifications. So yeah, that's pretty basic setup with users. Rent owner users can be managed from here as well. So if I want to give landlords access, I can do so straight from here by creating a website account for them. And my list of owners who haven't had an account set up yet for them would show right here. And going back to the users page, vendors can be set up from here too. Vendors don't have too much access. It's pretty basic for the most part, but you could give them access from here as well. It works pretty much the same way as a rent owner user is set up. All right, so that's the pretty basics on setting up staff members in here and rent owners and vendors. So settings and then user roles is where I can edit user roles. Now the administrator user role cannot be edited. This is the default kind of master role, and these are the default user roles Buildium gives you to start with. Now you can edit these however you want. If you want to keep some of these, I can also add new user roles and name them whatever I want, describe what the user role provides, and then from here just go down the list of everything I want to give them access to. I want to give them access to everything that has to do with properties, everything that has to do with rent roll, etc., and just go down the list. So pretty straightforward in setting up user roles. Nothing too crazy there. Something to keep in mind is be very careful though about how you edit the rent owner user role. Buildium set it up so that rent owners only have access to so many things, and it's by design. Now you can edit their access a little bit if you want to. Just keep in mind, the more you add, the more permissions you add, it may give them access to things you don't necessarily want them to see that has to do with other rent owners. So just be careful on how you do that. Something to keep in mind there. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the user roles. And going back to the application settings though, real quick, Probably the most important settings I would give you to start with the setup. I already touched on accounting earlier, but the management fees in particular, most people are going to want to make sure this is set up the way they need it to be. Now, if I go to my management fee settings, there's pretty basic options on I charge a flat fee, a percentage, something mixed, or something that whichever's greater. Now, the management company part here, it's going to default to a vendor called My Management Company. Now, I can add in new vendors, and My Management Company can obviously be edited. If I want to do that, it's under the vendors page. So right here under maintenance and vendors, I do recommend changing the name of this. You probably don't want it to say My Management Company. I could go in here and just edit that vendor, My Management Company, and change the name right here. I can just edit it to APM Help. And once I refresh this page, come back in here, and you can see right here, it says APM Help. So that's where you can change that there. I do recommend changing that. The default expense account for the general ledger, it defaults to management fees. That's pretty standard. You're probably not going to change this. I leave it personally. So management fees, pretty self-explanatory. Now, these settings right here are super important. Management income basically refers to pass-through income. It's any income that belongs to the management company entirely. So the accounts that you're typically going to see in here is things such as application fees, right? Management companies keep application fees. You're not going to be paying these to landlords typically. So you're mostly going to see things like application fees, the convenience fees in Buildium. We'll talk about those in another video. But NSF fees are pretty common as well. Like you're going to typically keep non-sufficient fund fees from tenants a lot of times. Maybe you'll give them to the landlords. It just depends on your policy, of course. But these are the kind of accounts that you'll typically see. Maybe you keep the late fees, maybe you don't. But these settings are super important to get right from the beginning, because if you don't, the accounting can get a little messy and you might need a professional to help you in that case. But yeah, and the non-commissionable income accounts, these are any types of income that you're not gonna collect a management fee off of. So a lot of times, what I see typically is, income that has to do with withholding security deposits, for instance, like forfeiting a tenant who forfeits their security deposit. Like I'm probably not going to collect a management fee off of charging a tenant for cleaning and maintenance, or charging tenants for utility reimbursables. These are pretty common things I see typically. Yeah, it's exactly how it sounds. Non-commissionable income. So basically, the rent owners keep these types of income entirely, or the association keeps the income entirely. You don't collect anything off of these types of income. GST, this typically has to do with Canadian folks, so you could set that up here. But that's a super important area in Buildium. You're going to want to get right from the beginning. The rental application part in Buildium is really, really good. I won't touch on this too much, but you can set up your application stuff here. The kind of default Buildium gives you from the beginning is pretty good. It's pretty standard stuff that you'll see in application. So it gives you a nice little head start on filling out application stuff. So you can edit your applications, of course, however you need to, but Buildium's application portal is really good. So you can edit your applications here, how they look like, how they're going to be filled out. Application fee settings can be done from here. This is pretty standard. Tenant screening, you can edit just some basic stuff about your default tenant screening criteria of do you want the screenings to typically charge your Buildium account, or do you want the screenings to typically charge applicants? This wouldn't really apply to people, though, if you're using the enhanced screening in Buildium, because the enhanced screening doesn't charge applicants. This is more so for basic screening. But yeah. Default lease renewal offers. What do you want your defaults to look like when you're offering renewals? Renewal offers. That is if you're going to use this in Buildium. If you're not going to use this, then you don't really need to configure this. Late fees. This is a pretty important setting here. I recommend looking into from the beginning, because the automatic late fees are they're tricky sometimes, in the sense that if you don't have it set up right from the beginning, well, then you're going to have some late fees charged that maybe you didn't want charged, and it's going to confuse you and the tenant. So I'd recommend getting this right from the beginning. This is kind of your global area, though. You can set up custom late fee policies for properties, leases, association owner profiles. You can set up a lot of customizations with late fees, but this is like your general policy that's going to apply to most properties and most people. So the options are pretty basic. The automatic late fees don't get too complex right now. They're pretty easy to understand, but might not apply to every single state for what you need. But for the most part, it really gets the job done and saves you a lot of time for having to charge late fees yourself manually. So try to get this done from the very beginning. Return payment automation. They used to not have this, but this is something where you can now have something set up where you can have anytime like a payment reverses, you could have Buildium charge a tenant automatically. And Buildium used to not have this, but they now have it in here, which is pretty cool. So you can set up that now. Rent owner statements, there's really not much of an option here. Like your statement period ends, like this is probably your default accounting cycle. So if I tend to pay out owners and give them statements from 11th to the 10th, well, then my statement period is going to be default to the 10th. Display tenant liabilities. Me personally, I feel like this often confuses owners if you're giving them all the activity that has to do with additions and subtractions from cash that have to do with security deposits and prepayments and last month's rent deposits. It's just a lot of information, I feel like. I tend to turn this off and just keep it really simple to have the rent owner statements just break down simple income and expenses, and that's it. Well, not just income and expenses, but equity too. If you do turn this on, just keep in mind that you're going to want to make sure your rent owners really understand it well, because it can confuse rent owners a lot of times. Because it's accounting, right? It's just like the more accounting you put in there, the more it might confuse people if they don't understand accounting. So keep that in mind. It does break it down well in Buildium if you understand it, but if someone doesn't understand it, it can confuse someone really quick. So I tend to turn this off for my clients. And the default display of transaction details. I personally like to do additions and subtractions. By date is pretty cool, though. I will say, just because Buildium released this not that long ago, it used to only have additions and subtractions. So I guess I'm used to it in that way. But that's something we'll see in another video when we break down reports more so. Vendor insurance, this is straightforward. It's on or off. That has to do with warning messages for work order pages. So event history, event history settings. So this is something where you can have your own kind of events that you can set up for a custom. And events, this basically relates mainly to the event history reports that you can run in Buildium. Now, Buildium has its own default events, such as moving in people, leases ending, etc. And you can set up your own custom ones too, which is pretty cool. So they will show in the event history reports. And that's pretty much it for the application settings here. I know I didn't touch too much on the bill approvals and maybe locked periods, but the bill approvals here, this is just setting up your policies that has to do purely with people approving bills, and that's it. That is if you're going to use this, right? So you might not even use this. That's the thing. Like if you're not a company that really has approvals per se, and you track approvals, well then you're not going to probably turn this on. So there might be some settings that don't apply to you. Keep in mind. And then locked periods is like locking your book so people can't change transactions from a locked period. And that's another thing you might not use as well. Buildium has some good locked period kind of elements in it already, such as reconciliation. So if something's reconciled, like you can't delete that transaction. You also can't change the amount. You'd only be able to change the property and GL account associated with that transaction if something's reconciled. So locked period is kind of an extra layer, if you will. But and markup settings as well, it's pretty straightforward. Just like if you do markups in your business, you could turn this on and update the policy. If you don't do markups, well, then you're not going to turn this on. And yeah, guys, that is pretty much everything when it comes down to setting up your company profile, going through the default settings in Buildium, and adding team members and setting up user permissions. Appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And yeah, have a good one.